This video is sponsored by Brilliant, but more about them later in the video. Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another video. So I have been thinking a lot about hustle culture. And I think it's kind of weird because at some point in the past, everybody was like, yeah, hustle, hustle, hustle. But then there was a movement that was like, no, hustle culture is toxic. And now, since the pandemic started, I feel like these hustle culture people and these anti-hustle people, they both evolved and become much more polarized. For example, with remote work, people who are pro-hustle found that during the pandemic, they were able to work remotely. And that actually led to people taking multiple full-time jobs, all remote, which has a term called overemployed. And the anti-hustle people, that is still going really strong with more and more people talking about it and a lot of media coverage. Then by extension, you throw in some pro-socialism political undertones. For example, on Reddit, our anti-work that challenges the capitalist society we basically all live in right now, and it becomes pretty complex. So in this video, I'm gonna try to unpack things. I'm gonna contain myself mostly to the relationship of hustle culture and the implications on the individual, and kind of limit myself on the political front because, just to be honest, politics is not really my thing. And also from the research that I have done, that kind of opens up a whole other can of worms. I'll also talk about how I think the anti-hustle culture people have actually failed us and don't really solve the problem. And then finally, I'm going to talk about some of my opinions about how we should be addressing the issues associated with hustle culture. Because in the end, it's all about trying to get a better life and increase happiness, right? Before I get started, I want to make a plug for my newsletter. It's called Boop's Keyboard, and it's about coding, about productivity and learning, as well as how to get your shit together. So you should check it out over here, also linked in description. All right, so in order to unpack things, we do need to pull back a little bit and go back to the time in which all of this started.
Let's go back to the start.
First, some definitions. From consulting the most reputable source of Urban Dictionary, here's the definition of hustle culture. It is the glorification of working very long hours in hope of reaching one's professional goals, while having a disregard for their health and relationships with loved ones. And it seems like the manifestation, the behaviors that correspond to this is late nights and early mornings. That's hustle culture. So hustle culture in itself is not new at all. This is an evolution of workaholism, which is a term that was coined back in 1971. This terminology of hustle culture is a more recent phenomenon. Some sources say that it goes all the way back to 2006 when the rapper Rick Ross became famous for his song Hustlin'. But I think it was really around the 2010s or so where this terminology and the culture surrounding it really started taking off. Hustle culture is basically workaholism but on steroids. With the onset and rapid progression of technology, it became easier and easier to work more and more. You can't just do stuff in the office and then go home and then be like, oh, I can't do anything anymore because I don't have my stuff, right? You could just take your laptop from work and then go home and work some more. Growing alongside this and kind of exacerbating the situation even more, tech culture grew larger and larger. And a lot of tech entrepreneurs really started to promote the hustle and talking about you gotta grind hard in order to achieve success. For example, Elon Musk over here was pretty much like, I do so good because I work harder than all of you. And then there's Gary Vaynerchuk, who, by the way, kind of became the face of hustle culture, which, I kind of get because he's a very inflammatory person who pretty much just tells you to grind.
Enjoy eating shit and dirt and bleeding and the grind.
So yeah, with these social media people, they're just promoting the hustle and spreading the word to their millions and millions of different followers and subscribers. And thus, hustle culture became more deeply ingrained into our society. So everybody was kind of hustling and grinding and things like that. And then it wasn't just constrained to your actual day job. There was this promotion of doing side hustles where you have to do a full-time job and then do things on the side as well. This is clearly not sustainable. So around 2018 or so, it really started to reach its peak and kind of go over the tipping point. People started rebelling against this mindset, making arguments that this hustling is really mostly benefiting the people at the top already. In the UK, according to the Health and Safety Administration, 595,000 workers per year suffered from work-related stress, with anxiety and depression resulting in the loss of 15.4 million working days. So that hustling is bad on your health and also counterproductive. In addition to this, it even led to death. According to the management guru, Jeffrey, I don't know how to pronounce his name, who is the author of Dying for a Paycheck, says that work has become the 5th leading cause of death. All of these arguments are extremely valid, and people quickly picked this up, realizing this. Thus, the anti-hustle culture movement became more and more mainstream, with people rebelling against the glorification of work and pushed back on hustle culture. By the way, I'm using the term like anti-hustle movement people, which doesn't sound that good, but the reason why I'm not using the more fashionable term these days, which is anti-work from the subreddit r/antiwork, is because I think it's not really fair for us to say that the anti-hustle culture movement is represented by that subreddit that has pretty much like became a huge shit show, especially after the mod went on Fox News and pretty much like made an entire fool of himself.
So I think laziness is a virtue.
So yeah, that's why I'm using the term anti-hustle culture people. Anyways, so this was already happening, but when the pandemic hit and with the whole work from home situation coming into play, these two movements became more and more polarized. Hustle culture is still going really strong, like people posting even more motivational quotes, telling people that now that they have extra time, they should be investing even more into working. And what I said earlier about the term overemployed, in which people take multiple full-time jobs working remotely in order to take advantage of work from home and make more money.
400,000 somewhere there before, and now we're over 1 million. People think of those numbers as really big numbers. It's not possible. I think this is a mindset thing.
So this was on the hustle culture people side. And then in the other camp of the anti-hustle movement, it also became much more evolved and polarized. What they advocate for is that now that people are working from home where they were laid off or something like that, this lack of commuting and office culture gives you some time to reevaluate what your goals are and reprioritize what is important. Some examples of this in social media is the hashtag Slow Living movement, which is all about slowing down your life, prioritizing your health, prioritizing yourself. Also, there's this I don't dream of labor trend that started off on Twitter in 2019, but really caught on during the midst of the pandemic, where a lot of young female influencers started talking about, oh, there's no dream job, I'm just gonna like quit my job. Of course, the role of an influencer is to influence, and they certainly did that. This movement was really spreading everywhere, and it wasn't just a few dissatisfied youths talking about quitting their job. So many people quit their jobs that this whole thing was termed as the Great Resignation, and posting I quit on social media became very cool. Caveat here is that this is an oversimplification. The Great Resignation did not affect everybody equally. Most people who did quit were lower income as well as single people. I will actually leave an article in the description that goes over these cold hard facts if you're interested. But I do think this anti-hustle culture sentiment, rejecting the idea of prioritizing your career and work at the expense of your family and your health. People realize that there are other priorities in life. So you might be thinking, okay, Tina, all of this makes a lot of sense, which I agree. This sentiment of not letting your career come at the expense of your health and your families and your relationships, this makes a lot of sense and is very, very valid. But do these movements and advice from the anti-hustle culture camp actually work? So the first thing I want to call out here is who are the people mostly contributing towards the anti-hustle culture camp? Influencers. They're saying that maybe you should quit your job, slow down your living, prioritize yourself, enjoy the little things in life. They're making these videos about how wonderful it has been ever since they embraced this movement and quit their jobs and stuff. I think the biggest problem that I have with this is that these influencers are telling people to quit their jobs, like, enjoy life, prioritize yourself. And this is all great, but unless you're an influencer and your job is to tell people to do that, how are you supposed to do that? Guess what? Not everybody has that privilege to just like slow down their lives and not feel stressed out while at the same time trying to make ends meet. Just like the way that hustling really hard was glorified and romanticized. Now, not working hard, even quitting your job without having a plan. This is being glorified and romanticized. But this is just as unsustainable. Like, let's take a look now at the people who participated in the Great Resignation and quit their jobs. What happened to the more than 40 million people in the US that quit their job in 2021? Yeah, most of them went and got another job because they have to eat. So the term the Great Resignation became the Great Reshuffle. There's this article that I read. What it said was that people who quit their jobs during the pandemic saw that their mental health got better, but their finances suffered. Who'da thunk? Now, before y'all come after me, I of course need to acknowledge the fact that working conditions for many people are better now. With so many people quitting their jobs, companies were forced to have better compensation in terms of wages as well as benefits. But does this really solve the problem though? In my opinion, no, nothing really fundamentally changed. Like, people pretty much resigned and forced companies to pay them better wages and give them better compensation. But then you go back to work because you need money and you're still in the rat race, aren't you? There's always gonna be someone who's just gonna be working harder and just raising the bar for everybody. And if I were to hazard a guess, if I were a betting Tina, I would say that the next few years, people are gonna slip back into having long hours and hustling because there's nothing preventing it from slipping back. The chances of a bunch of people quitting at the same time is gonna be very slim in the future. And as an individual, you don't have that leverage to just say I quit and for that to mean something at a company. Basically, my argument here is that there hasn't really been a paradigm shift in terms of how we look at work. And if we continue this conversation, it does start touching on politics, which is unavoidable. In particular, how capitalism is just very deeply ingrained in our society. There's only a very small handful of people who can just say I quit and slow down living and, you know, enjoy life and things like that. And those people are generally influencers or people who already have money and then they realize like, oh, like I don't actually have to grind that hard. But for the majority of people, you have to work because you have to eat. So later in this video, I'll talk a little bit more about what my thoughts are in terms of how we can achieve that paradigm shift, how each individual can take back that control and define work for themselves. But in the meantime, let me shit a little bit more on the anti-hustle culture movement. First up, why is it bad to work hard to achieve your goals? From these romanticized anti-hustle culture people, there's almost like this stigma now that you should not work hard. But as Eric Barker says in his book, Barking Up the Wrong Tree, hard work is necessary to produce success. So if you're anti-hard work, you're like basically anti-success. I get it. So the issue that people do have with the hustle culture is the fact that they're prioritizing their work over anything else. And I do agree with this. Like, you shouldn't be sacrificing everything just to be really good at your work. But if you want to be successful, you do need to work hard. And there will be sacrifices along the way because you can't have your cake and eat it too. In fact, I think it's kind of hypocritical because these influencers that are all about like, oh, like my aesthetics, like slowing down my life, enjoying my life in which I don't have a 9-to-5 job. Their videos are mesmerizing. They're relaxing and slow and beautiful. But curiously, why is it that we never see the scenes in which they're thinking about what it is that they're going to be doing for that video? The filming and the refilming, the editing, the staying up late part in order to get a video out because that's when the sponsorship deadline is. I just think it's so ironic sometimes. Like, you are making all these videos of like relaxation and stuff, and then you're like hustling to make these videos. Okay, so maybe you ask me, okay, Tina, what if I don't want to lead a successful life? So how to live life in a non-successful fashion? Well, first of all, naturally you realize that you're not going to get rewarded for this, right? Are you actually okay with this? Like, really, I hope you realize that the people who are really preaching this anti-hustle culture are actually hustling really hard in order to paint this image. And if you do just quit your job and maybe start your own business, realize that you're probably not going to get to live this life that you see from these influencers. You probably won't get to live in a very nice apartment with all these wonderful, relaxing things and not have to think about healthcare where you're in debt or any other adult things. Which leads me to my next point. What happens to people who don't have that privilege? I know I'm also speaking from a place of extreme privilege, and I'm not going to say that I know what that feels like, but I would hazard a guess that you probably can't just shirk all your responsibilities. So should you really be condemning people for hustling and trying to make a better life for themselves? That just sounds like really irresponsible and bad advice. Overall, like how I see it is that, okay, like I get it that anti-hustle culture is a direct pushback into hustle culture. So yes, it does raise awareness and get people thinking, but it's still a romanticization that doesn't really offer valid solutions. Let me also expand a little bit upon this. Like, what are the anti-hustle people promoting? From what I can tell, a lot of the solutions that are being offered are like, you should just take care of yourself, which feels really lackluster. Yeah, like we would all love to just take care of ourselves, but unfortunately, this world doesn't revolve around you. In our capitalist society, you do get rewarded for the amount of value that you provide. What else else do these anti-hustle people promote? Well, a lot of them also recommend that you should start your own business, which ironically is also what the hustle culture people promotes. And let me say for a fact, at least from my experience and the people that I know, starting your own business, it's not chill. Like, in fact, screw work-life balance. You're constantly thinking about work and you don't just get to sign off. And you also don't get the benefits that you get from your employment, like certain perks that you have, healthcare that you have. Other solution is do away with capitalism. Like I said, I'm not going to touch too much on the politics over here, but even if we were to do away with capitalism, which I have read it's quite difficult for us to do so because it's so deeply ingrained in our society, but even if we are going to do away with it, what are you going to do now? Right now, you do live in a capitalist society. And at least for most countries, it takes time for that to progress. And you need to eat right now. And then finally, the last of my issues, which is also kind of encompassing, is that anti-hustle culture is so focused on behavior, or like aesthetics, as the youths call it these days. It's like saying, oh, like you shouldn't be hustling. You shouldn't be like grabbing coffee on the go and then not cooking your breakfast. You should be like really chill, do yoga at the break of dawn, or like garden or some shit like that. These aesthetics are super appealing, but doing these romanticized behaviors are not going to make you happy. People are very different, and you can't just expect to follow an aesthetic and be happy. Here's my take. Remember all that hustling and anti-hustling? In the end, what it really is about is how to live a happier life. So let's actually look at what makes people happy. Dr. Amy, I'm not even going to try to pronounce her last name, but she's an associate professor of organizational behavior at Yale University's School of Management. And other researchers. They've been studying the classification of how people view their work, or as they call it, the orientation towards your work. This is divided into 3 categories. The first one is job orientation, which is basically people who see their work as just the means to an end. The second is career orientation, where people are more likely to focus on the elements that contribute towards success and prestige. And the third one is a calling orientation, where people describe their work as something that is deeply integral to their lives and their identity. Like they find a lot of meaning in the work that they do. The research shows that individuals who have this calling orientation report higher satisfaction with their lives even if they work the same amount of hours. So instead of condemning hustling or not hustling, or going like, yeah, let's like demolish capitalism, there's something a lot more actionable that each of us can take right now. And this is a paradigm shift for how you view your vision and your goals. Just to define things, vision is how you want your life to be, and goals are what it is you're going to do in order to achieve your vision. For example, my vision is intellectual freedom, which is the ability of doing anything that I want without worrying about making ends meet. And I also want to travel a lot. Sorry for those of you who have heard this multiple times, but just putting that as an example. So vision without goals is called dreaming, and goals without vision is simply productivity. So you're trying to be productive and hustle for no good reason. The issue with both hustle culture and anti-hustle culture is that they're both so focused on the behaviors. Like, it's good that anti-hustle culture kind of encourages people to rethink what their goals are, but they don't really offer any solutions for how are you supposed to do that? Like, how are you supposed to rethink your goals? I am going to cheat a little bit over here and just direct you to this video that I have over here about how I did my vision board, because if I explain that extensively, this video is going to be like an hour long. But if you don't have a clear vision for yourself and how to set goals for that, I highly recommend that you check out this video. In any case, your vision is your dream and your goals are your reality. The way in order to get to your vision and to achieve your goals is not by just rejecting work. Instead, it's about tailoring your goals as to what you actually want. If you want to have a lot of success, make a lot of money, have a lot of prestige by being the partner of a management consultant firm, there's nothing wrong with that. Do that hustle, climb that ladder. But say you don't care that much about career, you just want to have a life in which you can spend more time with your family, then there's nothing wrong with having a comfortable 9-to-5. There's no black and white over here. You get to choose the things that you want and you don't want. As Alain de Botton says, the difference between an adult and a child is that an adult has the ability of changing their circumstances. So it's not really about these romanticized behaviors from the hustle culture camp telling you to hustle constantly, or from the anti-hustle camp that's telling you to quit your job and slow down your life. It's really about redefining what you care about, what you want. For those of you who are part of the Great Resignation and looking for a job now, or if you simply want to upskill and have better pay and working conditions, knowing how to code and more technical subjects is one of the most sought after skills. And our sponsor, Brilliant, can help you with this. Brilliant is a STEM learning platform that specializes in interactive hands-on learning, which is very important for technical fields. And from my experience, the lack of interactive learning is the primary cause for why people give up or fail at learning how to code. Brilliant has timeless course offerings like math and stats, and programming with Python. And they also have new course offerings to explore topics like neural networks and quantum computing as well. You can join the millions of people who are already learning on Brilliant. And head on over to the link over here where you can get started for free, also linked in description. If you go through my link, the first 200 people will get 20% off an annual membership. All right, back to the video. In short, don't condemn the people who want to hustle. Hustling is a behavior, and if you want to be successful, you gotta hustle. And if you don't, then don't do it. I think trying to figure out your vision and the corresponding goals is what people really should be focusing on. So yeah, that is it. Let me know what you guys think, because I think like I'm not gonna say like, oh yeah, give people freedom and everything will be solved. It's just kind of like an idea, and I would love to see what your thoughts are about this. And I will see you guys in the next video or live stream.